Hello well-wishers and welcome to my channel Aspiring Minds. In today's video, we are going to discuss John Donne's poem of the Progress of the Soul, the second anniversary. So grab your virtual seats and let's begin. John Donne was an English poet and a cleric in the Church of England. He is considered a representative of the metaphysical poets, and there is a video on metaphysical poets already live on my channel along with other poems by John Donne which I have already explained in details. You can also go and have a look at that. So we see that John Donne's works are noted for a strong sensual style. It includes the sonnet form, the love poems, the religious poems, Latin translations, epigrams, elegies. So indeed, during his lifetime, he experimented with a variety of genres. To tell you about the background to this poem, Of the Progress of the Soul, the second anniversary was written to commemorate or to observe the death of Elizabeth Drury. And who was she? She was the daughter of Sir Robert Drury. John Donne uses the occasion of her death to explore the themes of the soul's journey, along with aspects like life, death, and the spiritual move that takes place of the soul from the present life to an afterlife. So just to reiterate or repeat whatever we discussed in the background of the poem, we can also relate it to understanding the central message of the poem. And what is it? The poem discusses about the soul's journey after death, emphasizing that even when a person dies, there is a journey from the present life to an afterlife. And because of this, there is a scope for human beings to live their life to the fullest. Instead of indulging in the corruption of the physical world, man must make efforts to purify the soul so that the afterlife is a comfortable life. Let us now go into the line-by-line meaning of the poem. Forget this rotten world, and unto thee let thine own times as old an old story be. The word thee and thine means you. So the poet advises the soul to forget about the physical world, because anyone who is a part of the physical world is going to be subject to decay. And the soul must take into consideration the past experiences and, learning from it, take what is important and delete or remove the irrelevant stories which are not important. Be not concerned, study not why nor when, do not so much as not believe a man. So the soul should not be troubled by the concerns of the world or the questions of existence. Instead, human beings must trust their reasoning capacity in just living their life to the fullest, instead of having questions that they are trying to find answers to which actually don't have answers. That is, you cannot understand what happens to human beings after they die and other such related questions. For though to err be worst, to try truth's forth is far more business than this world is worth. So making mistakes, yes, is bad, but the effort to discover the truth is even more burdensome, and it is not worth the trouble, because sometimes there are some bad situations that happen. Perhaps you suddenly hurt someone unintentionally, so that you can still go and rectify the mistake. But a bigger mistake which you have committed, maybe a paper that you submitted with something wrong and that was the final paper, you couldn't make changes, you can't do anything about it. These are just very tangible examples I'm giving you. There are higher concerns and mistakes which we make but we are not sure of. So the poet is telling the soul, don't try to indulge in trying to find meanings and answers to mistakes which you've already committed and it cannot be undone. He world is but a carcass, thou art fed by it, but as a worm that Caracas bred. So here the poet is trying to say that the world is being compared to a decaying body, and human beings are nothing more than worms who feed on the human body after you die. So that is how insignificant you are even when you are living this life. Because just the other day I was having a discussion with someone where they were saying that we spend so much of time trying to perfect our outward appearance. We go to the gym, we try to use beauty products, and ultimately what happens? Whatever religion you belong to, you will either be burned to death or you will be buried, and ultimately the body is meaningless. So similarly, human beings are born out of corruption. So you cannot try to have control over any and every problem or challenge that might come your way. So just try to live an easy life. And why should thou, poor worm, consider more, when this world will grow better than before? So the poet questions that why is the soul even caring about the world and trying to make an improvement in its existence. You cannot make everything perfect in your life, right? So if you try to constantly change things so that they become better and better versions and perfect versions, ultimately everything is going to be subjected to death and decay. Yes, I'm not telling you that you should not try only in the first place. There are certain duties and basic responsibilities that you must carry out, and after it is performed, don't put extra effort trying to perfect it. Than those thy fellow worms do think upon, that Caracas's last resurrection. So the poet is saying that the other souls are not concerned about the world's resurrection or improvement. It is just this particular soul which is constantly showing that it is getting bothered, worried about trying to make changes. Because right now, remember, the poet is addressing it as soul. The human being is no longer alive. So even if it identifies the solutions to the mistakes committed, there is no way out. So therefore, just as other souls are not worried when they are in this afterlife, this soul that the poet is talking to should also not be worried. The poet continues to say, forget this world and scarce think of it so, as of old clothes cast off a year ago. To be thus stupid is alacrity. Men thus lethargic have best memory. So the soul should not have any regard for the world where old things, what happens when things become old, when clothes become torn and tottered, or you don't like it anymore, they've become old. In a very simple manner, we just discard it. Similarly, the soul will be discarded. People will forget about your existence just a few days after you die, right? So you should not be concerned and bothered. Being indifferent to the world is one of the only ways by which human beings can experience joy. Those who seem to be lethargic, indifferent to the problems of the world, trying to make amends, make changes around them, are the ones who can have the best clarity of mind, because then their mind is not going to be indulging in trying to find solutions to petty things. Look upward, that's towards her, whose happy state we now lament not but congratulate. So the soul should look upwards towards Elizabeth Drury's exalted state, who is currently not experiencing sorrow, but instead her soul is celebrating. She to whom all this world was but a stage, where all sat harking her how her youthful age should be employed, because in all she did, some figure of the golden times was hid. So Elizabeth Drury saw the world as a stage where everyone would watch her youth with a lot of interest, her young age, because when she was young, of course, we all are attractive when we are young. So same is the case with Elizabeth Drury. When she was alive, she considered the world as a stage. She conducted herself in the best possible manner, and she could experience the gaze of the people. In her actions, people could see glimpses of a better purer time just because she lived a life where she was indifferent to the problems, the challenges, the concerns, tensions, and worries of the world. Who could not lack whatever this world could give, because she was the form that made it live, nor could complain that this world was unfit to be stayed in then when she was in it. So Elizabeth lacked nothing from the world, because in her life she embodied whatever she wanted to do in her life. She had no reason to complain about anything. She would not complain about the life that she was leading to be inadequate, to be imperfect, because she considered that her presence and her actions were justified. She was doing the best that she could to satisfy herself. She that first tried indifferent desires by virtue, and virtue by religious fires, she to whose person paradise adhered, as courts to princess, she whose eyes enchirped starlight enough to have made the south control, had she been there, the star full northern pole. So here basically the poet is saying that she tested her desires through virtue, that is through her good qualities, and also added to that she would turn to religion and try to lead a very satisfactory life. It is said as if paradise would come and walk to her, just as the courtiers in a king's court, in a princess court, they come and they try to please the prince. In the same manner, paradise would look up to Elizabeth Drury. Her eyes radiated light, and this light that was reflected from her eyes is compared to the northern pole star, the star that shines the brightest in the sky. Her eyes shone so brightly they could have influenced the northern pole had she been in the south. That is, if she was in the south pole, from there the light would travel as far as the north pole. She is gone, she is gone. When thou knowest this, what fragmentary rubbish this world is, thou knowest, and that is not worth a thought. He honors it too much that thinks it not. So the poet over here is saying that now that she is gone, one can realize how temporary, how worthless the world in reality is. You will see that a problem seems very big when you face it, but ultimately when that problematic phase of your life is over, you can look back and you'll be proud of yourself that you dealt with the problem in such an easy manner and in the best possible manner to the best of your capacity. So the same thing is being told by the poet, that now that she's gone, you will realize how worthless things are that we cling on to, we hold on to. Recognizing the fact that the world is actually worthless, one will be able to see that not everything that happens in our life is worth thinking about or overthinking about. Think then, my soul, that death is but a groom which brings a taper to the outward room. So here the poet is comparing death to a groom, a servant or an attendant who brings light or a taper into the dark room, symbolizing the beginning of the soul's journey from here towards afterlife. Whence thou spiest first a little glimmering light, and after brings it nearer to thy sight. So the light represents the soul's initial glimpse of the afterlife, which gradually becomes more apparent as death approaches. For such approaches doth heaven make in death. That is, the poet suggests that the process of dying is a gradual revelation of heaven. You will not directly land up in heaven. You will see it bit by bit, where the soul is going to perceive, to understand the divine light that is present in heaven. Think thyself laboring now with broken breath, and think those whose broken and soft notes to be division and thy happiest harmony. So the poet uses a metaphor of a musical harmony to describe the breath, which is very, very strained. It is very difficult for a person to be breathing the last final breaths, especially when that person is dying, suggesting that even the pain of death can be seen as a part of the beautiful and harmonious process of being able to move from this life into the afterlife. Think thee laid on thy deathbed, loose and slack, and think that but unbinding of a pack, to take one precious thing, thy soul from thence. So here the poet is saying to imagine yourself lying on the deathbed. You are weak, relaxed, and this would just be that last final moment when you are opening the bundle as if which contains a precious gift. And what is the gift? That your soul is going to make a journey from here to the afterlife. Think thyself parched with fever's violence, anger thine ague more by calling it thy physique, chide the slackness of the fit. So here the poet is telling to imagine yourself to be suffering from a violent fever. The fever is going to irritate you, and out of that frustration and irritation you would be calling out for medicine. You would scold yourself for feeling so weak out of the fit, but ultimately these moments of torment are just a part of the medicinal process which would purify you and prepare your soul for the journey. Think that thou hearest thy knell. Knell means death bell, and think no more. But that as bells called thee to church before, so this to the triumphant church calls thee. That is, he is telling to imagine that you're hearing the death bell and think of it not as something that is an end of your life, but rather it is a call, just like the church bells call for you. The same way you are being called so that you can be taken to the heavenly church where you could worship during your afterlife. Think Satan's surgeons round about thee be, and think that but for legacies they trust, give on one their pride, to another give they thy lust, give them those sins which they gave thee before. So here basically the poet is telling to imagine Satan's agents to be there around you, and think that they are only there to collect the good deeds from you so that they can turn you into an evil person. They want to, in the last moments, put pride into you, put lust into you, so that you could commit a sin in the final moments and not be able to reach heaven. Think thy friends weeping round, and think that they weep but because they go not yet thy way. That is, he is suggesting that the friends' tears are due to their own mortality, the fact that they are fearing death, that even their turn is going to come, they would die. That is the reason why perhaps your friends are crying, not just because of your soul's journey to heaven. Think that they close thine eyes, and think in this that they confess much in the world amiss, who dare not trust a dead man's eye with that which they from God and angels cover not. That is, you are supposed to imagine that your friends are closing your eyes and understand that in doing this they are acknowledging that they have committed a lot of wrong while they lived with you, because they could not dare to let a dead man's eyes see the wrong that they have done, not just to you but to others also. That is why your eyes are made to close before you, like after you die. Think that they shroud thee up, and think from thence they reinvest thee in white innocence. That is, imagine your friends are wrapping you in a shroud, and consider that they are reinvesting you in white innocence, a state of purity. Think that thy body rots, and if so low, thy soul exalted so thy thoughts can go. Think thee a prince who of themselves create worms which insensibly devour their state. So here Donne uses the imagery of a prince whose own decay consumes his state. That is, either you would be consumed by your own mistakes, or on a deeper level, he is referring to how the physical body is subjected to decay and it is fed by the worms. Think that they bury thee, and think that right lays thee to sleep but a Saint Lucy's night. So here in the final lines of the poem, the poet is telling you to imagine the burial and consider that these final rites are just a way of laying you to sleep for a night like Saint Lucy's night. So the burial is compared to how one sleeps on Saint Lucy's night, implying that death is only a temporary state, a temporary phase before the soul can journey into the afterlife and live on forever. So to talk about the major themes of the poem, I'll keep it very brief because the video is becoming very long. If you want, I could make a separate video on the themes of the poem. You can let me know in the comment section down below. Okay, so here basically in the poem, quickly we see how death is portrayed not as an end but simply a journey which we will take from the physical existence to the spiritual life, and we would reach an enlightened stage. So therefore we could say that the poem emphasizes about the fleeting nature of life and the material world. We worry about this belongs to me, that belongs to me, I want this card, that card. Everything is temporary. The poem also reflects on the journey of the soul to another world, heaven in this case. The poem also shows the scene of mourning Elizabeth Drury's death and celebrating her spiritual ascent to heaven. And lastly, we see how the poem also highlights the fact that as human beings, we should not be worried about the world because everything is unimportant. Things are bound to get decayed. People are going to corrupt you and do corrupt practices. Ultimately, it is you who needs to lead a pure life and try to, go ahead with your life in a very simple manner by living up with good qualities and also using religion as a kind of scaffold to lead you towards the right direction in life. So that's it from this video. I hope you liked it. Do hit the like button. Subscribe to my channel for more such future updates. Thank you for watching. Bye.